All right, welcome back to Replay. It's been a minute. It's man, that was a tough game, tough loss by the Ravens to the Jaguars this past week, week 12. I'm Nikhil Mehta, and joining me today is Jared Pinder from the Russell Street Report. Jared, it's great to have you back on the pod, albeit under less than ideal circumstances.
Yeah, definitely was a interesting game, but we got a lot to say for this episode, so I can't wait to get to it.
Yeah, I think the main stroke of this. I mean, this is tough. You look at a game where Lamar Jackson had 254 passing yards. The team overall had 162 rushing yards. They forced two fumbles, only recovered one. They had 4 sacks. It just felt like a game they should win, and they didn't. And that's because in every important situation, they came up with the worst result. Right? They field goals through the first 3 quarters. Couldn't stop the Jaguars offense in the fourth quarter. And it was another one of these games. It's kind of the fourth game. I mean, all 4 of their losses this year, they've been leading by 2 possessions. They should have won all four of those games. And look, there are teams like the Dolphins who have a crazy offense that are going to kill you when Marlon Humphrey's off the field. Sure, there are teams like the Bills who have Josh Allen. I respect Trevor Lawrence. I think Lawrence is quite good. But if you look at who his main targets were, Jermichael Hasty and Zay Jones, there's just really no reason for him to have been able to come back and win that game in the way the Jaguars did. And there's no reason the Ravens defense had to be in the situation it was, protecting, a 9-point lead that should have been well into the double digits, if not like 20 points by the time the fourth quarter rolled around. I think that's a pretty succinct recap of what happened. But I think the question now is what's next? What the hell is up with this team, and why can't they lock down wins when the game appears to be well in hand? I mean, it's like a playoff scenario when you just have your fate is in your control. You just have to win out. And they just seem to not be able to do that at the ends of these games. Jared, what do you think it comes down to with this team? Is it a culture thing? Is it a coaching thing? Is there not enough leadership from the players in the locker room? What do you think is missing, or do you think it's a combination of those things?
Well, I think it comes from a lack of. I think it really just comes from a lack of accountability from top down this organization right to the players. I think John Harbaugh, as much as we love John, his seat is not hot at all right now. That press conference he had after the loss was just sad. Like, he says every week, we're going to fix this, we're going to fix this, we're going to fix this. And it's just like, he just doesn't, it never gets fixed. Like, and the issues with this team, this is an offensive league, Nikhil. This is an offensive league. We're moving towards offense. I know the Ravens are zagging when everyone's supposed to be zigging. This kind of thing that that fans have got into all last offseason. I'm not going to get into that today. They went into this team. They went into this year knowing that their receivers were going to be bad. They went into this team knowing that they were Rashad Bateman injury away from not being good. These were things baked into this team. They traded Hollywood Brown away knowing that, this wide receiving room is not going to be good. But let's pray and let's hope that Rashad Bateman stays healthy. And he can't stay healthy. So now the whole entire offense is screwed. And it's not just Rashad Bateman's injury. Players need to step up. Demarcus Robinson, you need to catch that ball in that end zone. Devin Duvernay, what are you doing? You're an all-pro returner. Why did you choose this game to have the worst game of your career as a returner? What are you doing? Why are you dropping screen passes? Kenyon Drake, another dropped screen pass, Nikhil. I couldn't believe it. I literally put my shirt up over my mouth and screamed when I saw that drop. The drops from these receivers are terrible, and I think it just comes from a lack of accountability. Like, I think a lot of their issues when it comes to clock management, to roster building, to how this offense operates, to Greg Roman saying, we need to get Devin Duvernay more involved next week, two targets. Like, it's just so frustrating for for me as a fan to know that these problems aren't getting fixed and to know that the coach is just basically lying to the media. So that's what I think needs to happen, Nikhil. I need to see a little bit of accountability. I need to see John Harbaugh step into his 2012 shoes a little bit, realize what he has here. He has an incredibly talented roster here, and realize that, hey, Greg, maybe if you don't fix your clock issues, you're fired. How about if you don't get the plays in faster, you're done. How about that? But of course, probably nothing's going to happen, and we're just going to have to live with these flaws with this offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say at this point. I mean, again, they could change their mind tomorrow, but I don't think that they're going to move on from Greg Roman this year. Maybe I think it's pretty likely it ends up happening in the offseason at this point. Obviously, pending everything that happens with Lamar is another wrinkle, but I don't think Roman's back in Baltimore this year. I just think it's built up to the point where they don't need someone else. They don't need him to run this offense anymore. And at this point, he's built a certain amount of it, but he is actively holding it back to a certain extent as well. And so, I agree. I do think that it's hard to show accountability in another way than a midseason firing. And so the question is, do you really feel like keeping Greg Roman, like the adjustment from going to a new coordinator and the growing pains that come with that? Do you think that is going to change the outcome of your season? That's going to change your ability to win these games? Because if someone does something different one time in each of these 4 games, you're golden. And you're undefeated. And so it's hard to look at that and pin it down to a midseason firing as the solution. And it's hard to show accountability otherwise. I think that's the thing we don't realize. Like, they're not going to go light a coach on fire in front of the media. They're not going to do that to a player. They're not going to bench Devin Duvernay just because he dropped some balls. And it's hard to show accountability. I was watching Hard Knocks earlier, and the way they hold accountability is so different because it's not about the public. It's not about, raking a player over the coals in the public or a coach. And so I think that's something that I look for more in the offseason. What I look for in the regular season is change. And, if but they're going to come in next week and they're going to have some plays when it's running down to the wire again. But is Harbaugh going to step in? And this is where I think Harbaugh needs to step up. Is he going to step in and just call the timeouts in those situations on a 4th down and 1 that, you want to look, if you're not ready to go for on 4th down and 1, tell Lamar just take the delay game and punt the ball away. Don't give up a fumble at midfield when your team isn't ready for the play and whatever the heck else is happening. And so I think part of it is Harbaugh taking the reins. And I've said this before. I think Harbaugh stepping in more in red zone situations. I think him stepping in more in late game, high leverage situations, and having a way to kind of narrow things down for Roman and be like, okay, Greg, this is what you can pick from on 4th down. Narrow down even more than it already is. There are some plays that just straight up don't work in this playbook. Get rid of those. And I think the next question is how much of this does this fall on the players as well? I think you mentioned all the drops, right? If everyone's saying Mark Andrews is wide receiver 1 coming into this season, and I think we've probably all said it once or twice coming in, like, oh, we'll be fine, and then he's just dropping touchdowns. And it's just something that, the Travis Kelce's of this league do not do ever. They have drops. Andrews has always had drops. That's normal, but it's those drops in those big situations where you need 6. Having likely tweak his ankle, and Josh Oliver played pretty well, but I think that touchdown catch, Isaiah Likely is a bit more of just a natural receiver than Josh Oliver and probably makes that grab. That's a tough catch to make. Oliver slowed up a little. I'm not like hanging on him for not making that catch. He actually had a pretty decent game, but it's just these weird things where like Kolar isn't ready, Likely isn't ready. You're going to Josh Oliver, who's really a blocker for you. And, like you said, Devin Duvernay running back toward his own goal line, that changes how the offense operates. And Gus starts breaking off a run and they lose the ball. Like it's these things happening in sequence together that really, really just end up hurting this team late in games. And so it's also a question of, focus. Is it pressure? Is there something that, is missing? And this is where you got to look to the guys who have been in these games before. The problem is there are not as many of those guys on this team. You've got Houston, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Calais Campbell. That front seven seems really dialed in, motivated. But when Marcus Peters, you're supposed to be your veteran guy, is getting burned, right? You don't have Marcus Williams on the field. You're missing a little bit of, whatever it is you need to keep the defense on point late in games. On offense, I don't know who that guy is with Ronnie Stanley not on the field. No Stanley, no Bateman. Andrews isn't playing well. Lamar is Lamar, but who in the skill position, who in the O-line is keeping things running? And that's another question I have, is when players like Ronnie Stanley are injured, who steps up on that line to keep things okay? McCarry played fine. He didn't play great. I honestly wouldn't have hated seeing Daniel Falele in there to see what he brings in the run game, because I think he's more of a road grader than McCarry. But it's just so tough because all of these games were winnable. It's both like a systemic, consistent issue with this team, and yet it's always these little things. It's these little one-offs that you're just like, well, so close. And I think that's the most frustrating part, is they seem so close every time. They can win. They can win every game they've played this year. It seems like they can stand toe-to-toe with pretty much any team in this league. But if they're in a close game, if they have a lead, I don't know. They just lose focus. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's so weird, and it's frustrating because we have the third longest tenured head coach in football. Say what you will about the Steelers and what they're doing, they're locked in. And that's what makes me worried going forward, is that the Steelers are locked in now. So those easy wins, those aren't easy. So it's just like it's so frustrating because, like, it's like, you're right, Nikhil. It's like, who are those veterans on offense? And even on the defense, like, where are the guys in the secondary outside of Marlon Humphrey? Why is Marcus Peters playing like this? Marcus Peters has given up 7 touchdowns this year, Nikhil. Did you know that? 7. He had 7 interceptions his first 2 years as a Raven, I think, or close to. And he's given up 7 touchdowns. And
like you see, them flip Peters into the slot because Hamilton's out, and then Stevens is getting burned on the outside, and it's hard when Plan A and Plan B, when Plan A is injured and Plan B isn't working. Honestly, we're on to Plan C or D from the get-go at this point, because Kyle Fuller's out and Marcus Williams is out, and so this is causing a lot of different movement. And so one of the thing is, normally you might want to move Chuck Clark down into the slot, but you can't because Marcus Williams is out, and you can't just put Geno Stone in. It's stuff like that that's the specific injury luck that this team has had is crazy. It's still happening in the defensive backs. They're getting just completely decimated again. And, as a result, you can't have a plan A, B, and C for stopping a team because you only have so much personnel. You only have so many contingencies for injuries. Jalen Armour-Davis on injury reserve, not that he's necessarily a solution there, but he's not able to even be part of the solution. And it's stuff like that where I find it difficult to just put it completely at the feet of any one group, the front office, the coaching, the players. I've a lot of times at the end of the day, I think the players are getting paid the big bucks, and what the Ravens didn't do well on Sunday was execute simple things. I mean, drops. I can't get over these drops, man, because you're like, these are good throws, or Lamar's saving plays to salvage a few yards, or you're killing a play before it even starts. And so, there are issues with Roman. I'm not going to deny that, but it's hard for me to say that him getting fired fixes the problems this offense had.
You're right.
On the defensive side of the ball, McDonald's still kind of growing, learning with this team, this defense. I'm trying to be optimistic a little bit. And I think McDonald's has done a good job learning this year and kind of learning from his mistakes early in the season. And I think this is a game he's just going to have to learn from, change his calls. I think they're going to have to move Marlowe outside. I think they're going to have to change and having Marcus Williams helps a lot, but I think changing the coverages to have certain coverages for Peters and Humphrey on different sides of the field, because they're playing very different kinds of football right now. And, part of coaching is about finding ways to put Marcus Williams in a position to succeed. And dude is just not a zone cornerback. Like, he's just not, that just doesn't seem to be his strength. It doesn't, like, him sitting down and having to diagnose passing off responsibilities when he is just not like a top tier speed guy anymore. It just makes it hard for him to play. And so you have to put him in a position to succeed. I don't know. That's kind of the extent of my rant here, because everyone wants to put blame somewhere. And I just think it's so hard to lay it at one spot where, if the coaches do a little bit of a better job on Sunday, they win. If the front office was more prepared for certain things, they win at least one of the games I think they've lost this season. If they had better injury luck, I think they win at one of the games they've lost this season. But they win all 4 of those games this year if key players execute in key moments. And that's the killer part. These guys that are our favorites, Mark Andrews is especially a tough one because he's so many people's favorite player. He's, arguably the second best player in this offense, and he couldn't come up with it. And it's just like, well, you're going to live and die by that at the end of the day. If your best players can't catch a touchdown in crucial moments, then you may not win that game. So that's probably the end of my rant. We can move on to, I guess, the rest of the show here. We're gonna flip things around a little bit. We usually hand out awards and superlatives, and they're usually very positive things. But I don't want to be a negative Nelly, but I do think there's a lot of like just constructive feedback, constructive things to work on. And so we're gonna flip most of our awards. We're gonna talk about some players who were disappointing, some players who were supposed to be making leaps who haven't, and some head scratching decisions. But we'll start with a little positivity. Raven of the game. Kind of a weird, always a little bit of a weird award to hand out after a loss. And so really, I think there's really one, maybe 2 candidates for this. So I'll give you mine and see what you think. I don't think there's anyone who did a better job at doing his job. I think a theme with the Ravens is do your job. It comes from the special teams, but it's kind of a theme that I've seen with them. Everyone do your job. No one did their job to me better than Deshaun Jackson did. He has one job. It's to fly downfield and get open. He did that, made a great catch on a beautiful throw from Lamar Jackson. And, the one guy who just, I don't have any issues with how he played, maybe with how they deployed him, but he reached the fastest, he's 36, 37. He reached the fastest speed any NFL ball carriers reached this season, I believe, which is just crazy. And I'm not saying he's like, oh, he's the deep threat that's going to fix our offense, but he is a deep threat clearly that still functions.
Yeah. You took the words out of my mouth, man. I had trouble seeing anyone else. I will say, if you think that defense was bad, you better pray that Marlon Humphrey doesn't go out again. Mm-hmm. Marlon Humphrey right now is the glue that's holding this defense together. I know we got guys up front. I know we got Roquan. I know we got dudes up the dudes up front doing their job, but if this team didn't have Marlon Humphrey, and we saw it when Marlon Humphrey went out for that series, it was
the second to last drive, the Jags drive, that they scored the I think that was it they scored a touchdown, I think, on that, or the second to last drive. I don't remember if they scored a touchdown or field goal.
Yeah, that secondary, we saw how bad it was when Marlon Humphrey was on the field. It got downright unplayable out there when he's off. But, I do agree that it's Deshaun Jackson. I think we have to mention, I don't think he really, not exactly, I don't think he shouldn't win it, but I'm saying that, like, he did make a couple mistakes. Lamar definitely, I think, should have had a lot better stats than he did. I'm not the biggest, I mentioned last time, I'm not the biggest PFF grade guy, but I think some people were shocked by his 90 PFF grade. I wasn't shocked by it, Nikhil. I don't know about you. I was not shocked by that 90 PFF grade. I think he made some really good throws. That dime in the end zone that Demarcus Robinson dropped, that was a hell of a play to get out of a broken sack play, run out of the pocket, look down, look to the end zone, fire a missile right to Demarcus Robinson's hands that still to this hour I do not know why he dove for. Why did he dive for that football? Just sit down in the flat and just catch it. Easy touchdown. But Lamar wasn't perfect either, so Deshaun Jackson gets my vote as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is worth mentioning. Lamar did have a really good game. 5 drops is just on 32 passing attempts is just not going to get the job done. Like you were probably going to lose that game every time if your team drops 1 out of every 6 passes you throw. And had some big throws down the field. That throw to Jackson was beautiful. Yeah, I mean it's tough because you're like, if his receivers catch some of these beautiful throws, that's what we're going to spend our time talking about. The throw to Oliver, the throw that Oliver couldn't bring in, the one that Andrews dropped, the one that Demarcus Robinson dropped, some of the other ones where guys just dropped it that routine throws that Lamar puts on the money for them to make a play and they can't. And I agree. I think he did have a really good game. Rating of the game going to Deshaun Jackson. I think Jackson's going to be in the mix for this combo too, because there was really no better play in this game than that deep bomb from Lamar. It was, I think, the second longest pass this season. The first one, I think, was that Phillip Walker Hail Mary to DJ Moore against the Falcons a couple weeks ago. But, he is able to pull these throws off and misses a couple earlier in the game. And again, he's not going to hit every throw. I get that. He had one to Andrews that Andrews should have caught and didn't. He missed another to Andrews. My big thing is when he hits these, you've got to bring him in. Like, to me, I think the 100% can't miss is bigger on receivers catching deep throws than it is on quarterbacks hitting them, because you're not going to hit everyone. I think that's just accepted. No one hits everyone. Mahomes misses his guys sometimes too. But when he does, you got to catch them. And so I think that's why it was like almost seeing Jackson come in with that was like, oh my God, we caught one. I also think now is a good time to mention how this game ended. And you alluded to it at the very beginning, which is we almost had a real miracle. We almost had Tucker hit from 67. I mean, he was about as close as you can get to making that field goal without it actually going in. And it would have been so insanely undeserved of a win when neither actually not even just neither side, none of the 3 phases of the game played well for most of the game, other than Tucker drilling field goals. They just didn't deserve to have that go in. I mean, when he kicked it, I was like, this is going to have a chance. It's online. But I was almost relieved when it didn't, because they didn't deserve to have that win. And I think that they, sometimes they haven't gotten lucky enough to escape with any of those games this year. And they didn't get that luck this week. But man, that was an amazing kick. I mean, my dad thought it went in off like on the broadcast, but it was clear on the replay. It was like maybe a yard or two short. I mean, it's crazy for him to even get close. He's in Denver or like Mexico City where it's like 7,000 feet above sea level. That's in.
Yeah. Just, like you said, Tucker, sometimes I wonder if the Ravens even deserve Tucker, because sometimes he's this team's entire offense, especially in the late Joe Flacco years. He was this team's entire offense. But again, Deshaun Jackson really is one of the only guys you can say, well, this is literally a mile-high miracle play. It represents the mile-high miracle play represents what Deshaun Jackson did right there. 2nd and 20, you need a play made right now. They hooked it up. Deshaun Jackson, buddy, if you're gonna do that if you're gonna do something close to this every time every game when you're on the field for the Ravens, I'll take back all the criticisms I said about you. You might be one of the most underrated wide receivers of all time.
I like that take. I mean, the fact that he's out here at 37, 36, 37, still doing this is crazy. I mean, he talked about how he like worked really hard to get back into shape, and it's like, okay, how do you get to 37 and then get back into the shape that you were close to when you were 25? I mean, it's crazy. And I think him and maybe Justin Houston shared that, they're sharing a water bottle or something, sharing whatever fountain of youth he's drinking from. But yeah, absolutely. I think we can go to the Back to Practice award now. And, given that we're going to flip around, talk about some other things that went wrong. I like Back to Practice to talk about units and situations. And so I think that there are 2 really clear things that the Ravens need to work on. It's red zone offense and it's 2-minute defense. They have struggled in 2 minute. They've struggled when opponents are losing and they're going in these hurry up, pass first situations. I think we see too much soft zone. I think McDonald backs. I think we see too much soft zone without a blitz. I think McDonald backs off the pressure after. I'm trying to remember what game he was blitzing at the beginning of this year, and then they lost. But it seems like he's backed off the pressure. I just think that at a certain point, you have to go back to what your defense is built for, which is, you're built to be a man coverage team. And if you need to have simulated pressure, I think the fact that Tyus Bowser is now in the lineup means they should be running simulated pressure constantly in obvious passing situations, because you've got a handful of guys in Bowser, Roquan, and in Queen who can blitz and drop into coverage at any given moment. And it just feels like late in games, and this may be an on-field leadership thing comes in, they lose some of that edge and some of that aggressiveness that, I feel like they're lacking. Part of that was because I felt like the Jags were moving the ball on them all game. I felt like the Jaguars were overall, able to move the ball quite a bit in the first half. And so by the second half of this game, this defense is tired and they didn't have an answer. It's almost like because they held the Jaguars to just 7 points or just 10 points in the first half, they didn't switch anything up. They didn't come out the second half with anything new. They just tried to hold on. That may be a consistent pattern this season when it comes to McDonald, and he sees the defense doing well in the first half. There has to be a preemptive adjustment. You have to think about what their offense is going to do differently coming out, what they're off, and how you're going to counter as a defense. You have to think ahead. It's chess. And so I think that's another thing that, that this defense can work on. Red zone offense is a little trickier because a lot of it is just catching the damn football. What did you see in the red zone offense other than that, maybe that this team can work on in practice?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So I'm trying to think. By the way, if you haven't followed Ryan Mink yet, wonderful Twitter thread. I don't know if you saw it, Nikhil. He posted all 22 of every single red zone trip today on his Twitter. Go follow Ryan Mink. He's a really good follow. The one thing I saw, obviously, was the drops. I did see a couple of blown assignments on the run game. I don't know if you saw them. Patrick Ricard, buddy, if you're going to be one of the highest paid fullbacks in the NFL, you got to get down there and make that block on. I forgot who it was on, but he kind of lazily blocked them and it was on Lamar Jackson run. If he makes that block, Lamar Jackson's taking that to the end zone. And so that's one drive that got taken away because of bad execution, bad blocking, and all that. I did see that the Jaguars, I think they were playing really heavy man in the end zone. I went back, Nikhil, I don't know where Lamar's supposed to go with the football on some of these red zone plays. It's just all right, well, or Demarcus Robinson, well, he's covered. Devin Duvernay, he's covered. Justice Hill check down. Well, Andre Cisco is coming down, and Andre Cisco is a really hard hitting safety. He's been like that since he came out of Syracuse. He's going to hit hard, and if he hits and if Justice Hill catches that on third down, well, Andre Cisco is probably going to stop him at the red zone, right before the red zone. Okay. Again, Demarcus Robinson, catch the freaking football. I'm trying to keep it cool. Catch the football, Demarcus Robinson. Mark Andrews. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Andrews elephant is a big thing with this offense. I mean, it just feels like a lot of the plays for this offense, one reads to Mark Andrews, and it feels like there are elements of the timing and the route concepts that just aren't in this offense. Like Lamar's looking at Andrews as his first read a lot. And that's fine without Bateman. I understand your first read is your best player. I'm not going to quarrel with that. But the second read has to be on time after the first read. The second read on the play can't be designed to come open before Andrews does, because then you're going to miss him. And so I think that's another thing in the red zone is that, he's looking at Andrews when there's another player in the same area. Or he's looking at Andrews, or he's looking at the other player too late because Andrews has a slightly longer developing route. I think that is part of the issue of the Andrews-centric nature of this playbook, because like I said earlier, you live and die by Andrews, and Is Andrews like a generational talent? He might be, but he's not as of right now. He's certainly not, a wide receiver one level tight end, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm pretty picky about the term wide receiver one. Like
Yeah.
Travis Kelce is the only guy in the NFL who really
Mhm.
represents that kind of player. And so, I think that's another thing they need to work on in the red zone is featuring guys other than Mark Andrews. A lot of times it's use your height, find a soft spot, Lamar try and burn one in right by a hash or something like that. And, you know, they have other guys. Look, James Prochet is really not like a really great. He's not a deep threat. He's not getting open deep,
Mm-mm.
but he's a lot more useful in the red zone where he doesn't drop things. Like, he doesn't drop anything. And so don't use him when you're at your own 30 trying to get down the field. Get him in the red zone where Lamar can put a ball. It's a little harder to get, and he's going to make that catch when maybe Duvernay doesn't, or Andrews or Oliver may not. Part of coaching is about putting your guys in the best position to succeed. And one of the things about Prochet is he's not a burner. He's not beating anyone with his releases off the line. A lot of it is his hands, and you have to use that in areas where it helps. Second and 10, a 3-yard or 3-yard hitch to James Prochet gets you just 3 yards. But doing that on 1st and 4, when you say, okay, quick out or a quick hitch, and you can burn one into him, Jackson can really burn that into him. And Prochet can be trusted to make that catch. I think that's another thing with the deployment of their resources, where it just doesn't feel like they're putting their best guys in the best position to succeed. In these key situations. So I think we'll leave that for specifically back to practice, because I think practice really, that's situational stuff. Welcome to the Flock Award. This to me is, who are we missing the most? I think it's really notable that the Ravens made 4 kind of key free agent sign additions this offseason, plus bringing back Justin Houston. Kyle Fuller is an all-pro cornerback. He's the kind of guy the Ravens just trust to have on the field instead of Brandon Stevens. Out for the season, game 1. Marcus Williams, playing amazing, dislocates his wrist, freak injury, still out. He's back to practice, should be back soon. Morgan Moses has been pretty solid. I've been hard on him a few weeks. He didn't have his best game this week. I still think Daniel Falele should be replacing him probably by next season, opening week, if not a lot sooner. He's fine. Michael Pierce, big run stuffing defensive tackle, was getting pressure on the quarterbacks from the interior, out for the season. Which of those players, I mentioned Fuller, Pierce. Oh, don't forget Kyle Hamilton is also out right now because he got hurt. I'm not even going to mention Ronnie Stanley, because Ronnie got rolled up on and people were already starting to give him crap about that. And another player literally rolled into his ankle. I don't know what he's supposed to do about that, but we're missing him, obviously. But of those four players, Michael Pierce, Kyle Fuller, Marcus Williams, and Kyle Hamilton, 3 of those are defensive backs, like I mentioned. Who do you think we're missing the most of them? And who do you think brings back the most of this defense?
Can I give 2?
Yeah.
Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams. Easy.
The 2 starters.
No, the thing about this is that, like you say, like 2 starters, they're not just starters. They're Pro Bowl. All right, one of them is potentially an All-Pro safety, and Marcus Williams. I miss Marcus Williams so bad. Oh, I miss him so bad. And it's weird because, like, Geno Stone was playing solid for a couple weeks. It was just like, well, do you really miss him that much? I'm telling you what, right now, this game made you remind the difference of Geno Stone and Marcus Williams. It reminded you, like, oh yeah, welcome back to reality. This is a 7th round pick out of Iowa, and this is a Pro Bowl, potential All-Pro, $70 million safety. The difference. There is a difference, Nikhil. It might not be a huge difference, but there is a difference. And Kyle Hamilton, you mentioned about how Marlon Humphrey playing in the slot and all that. Nikhil, I think that's mainly because of Kyle Hamilton's injury. I actually think it's 2 things. I think it's Christian Kirk in the slot, who is the Jaguars' best weapon. He got shut down by Marlon Humphrey. Nothing. Nada. None. He got the clamps. Nothing. Zay Jones was the one who was beating us. But I think that's due to Kyle Hamilton's injury. They like Kyle Hamilton not only as a strong safety, but like as a slot corner. They like him at like the matchup with those tight ends, with those bigger guys. They like him in those situations. So when that happens, they can put Marlon Humphrey on the outside. If they have Kyle Hamilton, you give me one player I need for this game. I need Kyle Hamilton for this game. He makes this game so much better, and I'm dying on that hill. He makes this game different. I'm telling you.
I agree. I actually, this was Gino's first really bad game. Gino, I think, has played really, really well since stepping in for Marcus Williams. Other than this game, everyone was like, oh, Kyle Hamilton time. And, those of us who knew what the Ravens were thinking with him, what they've been doing with him all year, was he's not just going to slot in that spot. They're still going to use him as a matchup weapon. And him being in the slot, them being comfortable with that, more and more comfortable as the season goes on, it lets Marlon be outside where he can be his physical best, where he can stay as a dominant edge setter against the run, where he's the kind of guy who picks up Jermichael Hasty on a wheel route and stuff like that. Like, I think that him being outside just means there's less open space for the other team to attack, because the middle of our field defense with Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen is so strong. But then when Queen is in the slot, it just feels like the outside, Stevens and Stone, is just so fragile. So I think you really hit it with getting Hamilton back. Obviously, Williams is just as important, more important to this defense, but I think having Hamilton back frees up McDonald to do more of what he wants to be doing instead of adjusting to his circumstances, if that makes sense. Stone is a more one-for-one replacement for Williams, downgrade in quality, but look, he's played quite well in Marcus Williams' absence. Again, Jacksonville was the only game where he's been really bad, and part of that was because he's the deep safety on the side of the field where Brandon Stevens is, and Stevens wasn't playing well because Humphrey was in the slot. So you can't really replace a player like Kyle Hamilton the same way. You can only adjust your defense, and I think that really took away from what Mike McDonald likes to do. I think you're spot on with what you were saying about Kyle Hamilton. Pierce. Ultimately, I mean, they allowed 30 something rushing yards in this game.
Mm-hmm.
They allowed 38 rushing yards in this game. Pierce maybe gets a little more interior pressure on Lawrence, but I still feel like the pressure was there. Kyle Fuller is kind of the big question because he didn't look super great early on, but is just a really reliable guy. The kind of guy that you'd be saying, okay, Kyle Hamilton's out, I can put him in the slot on Christian Kirk, or I'm okay leaving him outside on Zay Jones. Not the way that, unfortunately, Brandon Stevens was just a liability. And, that crushes me for the Ravens to see them have made a couple good moves like that and then have them just get blown up by injuries. I think another big theme of this season has been kind of the stop and start of breakouts, has been the inability of, guys who are in their second and third year in the league to really come in and produce. Now, obviously, Rashad Bateman has a Lisfranc injury, and there's nothing he can really do to produce right now, even though this was supposed to be his breakout year. But I think we can talk a little bit about where Justin Madubuike and Odafe Owe have kind of gone this year on the defensive side of the ball. Madubuike has been really good all year, and then it just felt like he kind of disappeared from his impact plays this past week. I don't think that I'm not too worried about that. I don't think it's a trend. I just think he had a tough matchup against Brandon Scherf and just did not win the dang thing. Odafe Owe, it's a little trickier because, you were talking about PFF grades. He's gotten okay PFF grades. He's gotten a few pressures a game, but he's not dominant. And I think that's the thing that's really disappointing, especially from those of us at Rush Report who went to training camp and saw him just beating Morgan Moses and Jawan James and whoever was opposite, which I guess tells you a little more about the quality of, maybe those guys against elite pass rushers. But Owe isn't able to do that to opposing tackles who seem to be similar quality to Moses and James. And I just don't know what it is, but this was really supposed to be his breakout year. And in those moments at the end of games where you got to get to the ball, you got to get to the loose ball on the ground, you got to bring Lawrence down before he gets the play off or before he gets the throw off. That's where your freak athlete Owe is supposed to be making some of these plays, and it just feels like they have not been there.
Yeah. Odafe Owe is seriously, honestly think he might be the most disappointing player of the 2022 season. I don't think anyone else has disappointed more than him. Obviously Rashad Bateman, but like that's not really disappointing. It's just kind of a terrible situation with his injury. It's not really disappointing. It's depressing. It's sad, but it's not really disappointing. Odafe Owe to me right now is a power hitter in a strikeout slump. He's swinging for the fences. He's trying to get that big play. He's trying to do. I think he's just trying to do too much, and this is really sad because we were so hyped for the potential Ajabo Odafe Owe group going forward, and we can still be hyped about that. We haven't even seen Ajabo yet on the field. We'll probably talk about that later in the show. Haven't even seen him yet on the field. Maybe he does, break out next year, but I don't know what the issue is. I could look at the tape and tell you 15 different things about what's going on. I think he's just real. I think he needs another pass rush move. He seems like he just has a bull rush and underneath Von Miller kind of like the speed rush, and then that's it. Like there's just no like ethic to like.
There's no variety. It feels like he's reacting to what's in front of him more than he's necessarily planning. I also think that to a certain extent, the last few weeks is when he's supposed to start popping because Bowser's back. We've got Roquan Smith. He's fewer coverage responsibilities. He has more opportunities to just pin his ears back and go after the passer with some of the leads that we have. And sure, I'll mention he's getting chipped a lot. He's getting double teamed. He's getting held and not getting called. Sure, all of that is great. That happens to all of the elite pass rushers in this game. And so for him to, he's got to fight through some of those plays. He's got to, you're not going to get called for holding if the holding isn't close to the quarterback, quite frankly. That doesn't happen. You don't see a lot of holdings called that are away from where the QB is. And so if you're getting held, you have to use that frame to be close to the quarterback, to move, even if it's not. And I think this is an issue. He tries to fight through a hold and break out of it. And a lot of these savvier pass rushers will basically exacerbate the hold. They'll keep their legs moving under the hold instead of trying to use their upper body to get out of it, and basically make it so obvious they're being held so that they end up falling closer to where the QB is. Things like that I think that he needs to pick up too. And it's disappointing that we were so excited about it to have him with Houston and Jason Pierre-Paul and building from these guys. And it just doesn't seem like that's happened. I think it's still too early to say he's a bust, because I don't think anyone can be a bust after, a year and a half, especially when, he's a pretty raw player. He was dealing with COVID for a lot of his college career. I think that's, something we forget a lot of times, is that this adjustment is tough, but the time's come and due for him to start making these adjustments and start exploding. And I think that, it's looking like it's just going to have to be next year that he has a full off season. And, because he was injured at the end of last season, so he didn't even get a complete off season. It's stuff like that, there are explanations, and that happens to multiple players. And the truly elite guys who are elite early in their careers are able to fight through that and win and be elite regardless. And it just doesn't seem like he's quite there yet with who he is as a player. I'm not ready to call him a bust, but he's certainly not living up to his billing of, what he was supposed to be this year. I don't even care too much about draft position later down the line. I think that's just something we like to think of, and it's more a way to evaluate the front office than it is to evaluate the player. It's not like Owe asked to get picked in the first round and have the expectations of a first rounder. I just think it's what he's supposed to be based on what you've seen, what he's physically capable of, and he's capable of a lot more, I think. That's I don't know. I mean, I was really excited about him getting to work with, I'm forgetting his name now, but Ryan Osborne, the Michigan assistant, who came to Baltimore with Mike McDonald. He, both David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson really credited him with helping open up their pass rushing game. Does Owe need to start rushing from standing up more instead of his hand in the dirt like he does a lot? Some changes like that I just, I think, a guy like Ryan Osborne can just get more hands on, like make a change and see what happens. At this point, I think some of the thing is with the Owe is you don't have much to lose. So make a change and see what happens. Moving on to our head scratcher of the week. There were a lot of weird decisions the Ravens had in this game. That fourth down, I don't know what's up with those fourth down or QB sneaks. It just seems like Lamar seems to take like a sidestep to find a gap first, and teams have caught on to that now, and there aren't gaps. And then he also puts the ball out. He's fumbled on a couple of these 4th and 1 QB sneak attempts, and he puts the ball out where it's not safe. And so I just think that, if it's QB sneak, just do it straightforward. You don't need to get in pistol. Have Ricard and Boyle behind you. Every team's doing that now, pushing the QB forward, or give it to Ricard, or do the sneak. Just do the sneak with Andrews, right? Or pull out the Duvernay sweep. Do a trickier play, even if it's on 4th and 1, because they've actually executed those really well all year. They don't execute the simple stuff well, but those weird things they've pulled them off pretty well this year. And so I think that's probably my main head scratcher. Maybe Harbaugh should have called a timeout on that play because they're running down the clock. I think that's maybe the other, definitely the other major head scratcher, which is what is up with the time management on this offense. And it's not just the red zone, it's up and down the field. I think it's a combination of Roman's play calling system. I think there's a lot more Roman indecision going into it than we know of. I think that Harbaugh is definitely covering for him on that, but I don't think Roman plans out his plays and scripts his plays enough. It just seems like he's trying to call things that are really reactive, and his scripts actually work. I find that his game scripts, when he scripts out a couple plays, when he scripts out a drive, a hurry up drive or an opening drive of a half or of the game, it works well when he scripts things like that out. And because you can drill and make sure everyone knows the plan, there's fewer miscommunications. It's easier to tell your players what's next. You have to use less words. And so I think that there's a lot of things in there. And again, Harbaugh, like you said at the top, Harbaugh needs to take control of that. Harbaugh needs to say, look, here's how we're doing play calling. Here's how we're doing 3rd downs. Here's how we're doing 4th downs. When we're in the red zone, here's how we're doing it. Because these self-inflicted penalties and things like that are, the one thing that's probably the easiest to fix, maybe other than drops, that moves this offense to a point where they could probably win that game if they don't screw up simple things like calling the play, getting to the line, and snapping the ball within time. Like, to me, I think that's the biggest head scratcher.
Yeah. The 4th down call, I miss 2019. I miss 2019 when they were the kings of 4th down call. All the creative play calling, I miss 2019. I miss when this offense was it. I miss when teams feared this offense. I miss it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It doesn't feel like teams are scared. Defenses are scared of this offense anymore.
They're not. Because who are you going to be scared of? You're going to be scared of DeMarcus Robinson? He's good. He's a good player. But you're going to be scared of him? And 2019 didn't really have guys you afraid of. I mean, they had what?
It was Lamar. It was Lamar they were afraid of. And, on 4th and 1, you're asking Lamar to run between the guards. Like, it's just not a, go into shotgun and run QB sweep or QB power. Do that if you're going to do it, right? Like, I don't know. It's this is head scratcher segment because it is maddening to me when, like, we know Roman can call plays sometimes, and that's not like why does his brain just turn off sometimes, or why does the offense as a whole, it seems like their brain turns off sometimes. And so I think I haven't looked at the defensive film enough yet to really talk about what's up there and where the decision making process is wrong there. But to me, I think the biggest head scratchers is just the way this offense is run. The way plays are called and put into action is just fundamentally wrong. And I think it's, again, I think this has to be the Ravens last year with Roman, because this can't continue. And frankly, to me, it's Roman, you got to fix this or it's your job. And you tell him now. And you give him the time to fix it, even if you still plan on, replacing at the end of the season anyway, because unless you win the Super Bowl, you're going to have a reason to do that. So I just think, like you said at the beginning of the segment, I think it comes down to, and you're not going to tell the media this, and our fans were never going to get the satisfaction, but I sincerely hope in the locker room or in the coaches' meetings, whatever, Harbaugh's basically, look, I don't care what you have to do. Fix the play calling or it's your job, because that is like a huge part of your job that you just are not doing right now. I think the
Yeah.
other thing is, and we see this with a lot of teams around the NFL, is Harbaugh still doesn't know how to navigate these 2-minute situations that well, how to use his timeouts that well. I just think that like every team should hire a player or a coach who's responsible for those decisions and is in the head coach's ear right next to him every time one of those situations comes up, because there is so much for head coaches to keep track of, and then to have to keep track of all the little minute details about the time, the quarter, the down and distance, how many timeouts you have, how many timeouts they have. Like, yeah, he's an NFL head coach and he should be able to keep track of all this stuff. But I don't know why more coaches don't understand that as an entirely separate part of the game that needs to be, I think, prepared for more than it is. So I don't know. It just seemed like a lot of really poor decision making on the offensive side of the football across the board yesterday.
Yeah, and before we move on to the next segment, I did want to mention something.
Mhm.
So yesterday, I was thinking about 2012, like yesterday, with the firing of offensive coordinator, and they brought in a new guy, and I'm like thinking to myself, maybe there. I was just trying to find like footage of videos about like what like Harbaugh said in 2012 about like why he did what he did, and then like and then I found the 2012 America's team our Super Bowl video,
Mhm.
and something that Ray Lewis said when that happened really stuck with me. He said that what that move said to the team and said that we think we are better. We think we are a better team than this. So we're going to move on from this guy and we're going to bring in a new guy because we are better than this. That right there, Nikhil, I need somebody to come into that room and say, we're moving in a different direction because we feel we are better than this. We have to get off this road and get to that highway. And it just feels like that. I don't want to say Harbaugh has lost his edge, but like you just feel with the way he's talking. You just I know we can't take what the media says, what he says to the media truthfully, because he lies. Like straight up, he lies to the media. Like there's no other way to say it. Like he's not gonna diss his dude on he's not gonna air his dirty laundry out to the media. But like, where is that edge? Where is that fire? Where is it, Nikhil? Where?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that, it's this weird duality of the Ravens organization with the Ravens way and Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, and Harbaugh, Billick, all these fiery coaches and players and this and that. This organization really does preach stability, though, and I think that they don't like rocking the boat. They don't like players who are going to rock the boat. They don't like coaching changes. They don't like changing coaches, man. I'm telling you, like, them getting rid of Wink was so surprising last year because of how much this team hates changing coaches. And part of it is because they have stability. They have long-term plans. They play and they build teams in decades. But what I think that does, and what you're saying, is it takes them out of the moment when you realize that, okay, maybe changing coordinator doesn't actually do much to our 5-year outlook right now. It doesn't. Maybe we predict we have the same number of wins, championship appearances, Super Bowls, whatever in the 5 years. If we change Roman now, we change him at the end of this season, or we change him at the end of the next season. But I think that is missing the variability that comes into play with like just human athletic performance. That things change markedly when your environment changes and when things change around you. And when players are let know, like, hey, like you said, this isn't us. We're better than this, and we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're going to take our lumps with a new coordinator for the rest of the season. Does it fix everything? Like I said, does it fix the drops? No. But I think it sends a message about the accountability and the importance of saying, look, we're leaving that stuff behind. We're leaving that, Greg Roman didn't cause the drops. Greg Roman, it's not his fault players dropped the ball, but that is something that is staying with our offensive old and we're moving forward. Do I think it's going to happen? No, of course not. But quite frankly, it's not news I would really. I was fine with keeping Roman early in the season when the offense was humming, and it seemed like these issues weren't going to bring the entire team down. It was just going to be a growing experience throughout the year, and they're not growing. They've gotten worse throughout the year, and I think that is the sign that a change really needs to be made. No comeback player of the week this week because all of our comeback players either struggled or were not playing. Ronnie Stanley, J.K. Dobbins out. And of course, Gus Edwards was playing, but didn't have the best game, like we mentioned, not the best run blocking, but was able to break off a few runs, but just pretty pedestrian game for him. One thing I do want to mention is unsung hero. Shout out to my guy Broderick Washington, again playing incredible football with Broderick with Michael Pierce out. Washington was really seen as, I think, more of a like 3-tech defensive end than a pure nose tackle, at least from my perspective. But he is really, he's 305 pounds, which is a little bit on the lighter end for a nose tackle in a 3-4. Has just taken on that role. I mean, I think the Ravens defense, the defensive coaching staff seems to trust him more than they trust Travis Jones as a rookie at this time, which is fair. I'm not gonna hate on that. It'd be nice to see Travis Jones play more, I guess, but not if he's not going to do better than Broderick Washington. And it's one of those cases like with Geno Stone going down where you were like, oh man, you thought the rookie's going to step up, and it's not. The Ravens had a plan already ready, and you got to kind of compliment on that on the defensive side of the ball, really with the way that whole line has played for most of the year. Like I said, they dominated the run game. Any players flying under the radar that you want to shout out, Jared?
Under the radar players, I think you mentioned the obvious one, which is Broderick Washington. What a turnaround season for him! I didn't think he was going to make camp. Coming into this year, I didn't think he was going to make it. They had signed Michael Pierce, they had drafted Travis Jones. I was so high on the Travis Jones train. I got too caught up in the Travis Jones train. That's my fault. I got too excited for a rookie. We should know 3rd round, 4th round rookies don't usually, I say usually because sometimes they do, don't usually make a big impact on competitive teams. Usually those guys are for stack and stat, kind of like stack and just kind of like stash them and like develop them and let's see if we can get to that point. And Washington's been like followed that model. He's kind of been with the organization for a while. Showed some flashes last year. We had a couple of really good games. I remember even saying at some point in the offseason that, like, look, we're going to let Brandon Williams go, who just signed a contract today. And I would be fine if they let Broderick Washington kind of, 50-50 split on a veteran nose tackle. Like, I was fine with it just to see what's beyond door number 3, which wasn't something the Ravens were doing. They were so heavy veteran beforehand, and I'm happy to see that the young guys are getting their shot to play. So I really think Washington represents the unsung hero monocle pretty well. Again, no one really else truly stands out for me. I think it has to be Broderick Washington.
Nick Boyle had probably his best game this season. I just felt like I saw him more, and he just looked better. But again, it just didn't really translate to much. When he's really just a blocker, he's just not it doesn't just seem like he's a passing threat anymore. And obviously having a blocker only tight end is like having another Patrick Ricard on the field all the time. And that's not super useful. Although I think it is worth mentioning that, with likely out there, we're going to be some Oliver was going to step into a bigger receiving role, and that was going to require that Boyle pick up more blocking snaps. And, he's not on this team next year. That's obvious, but it was nice to see him get a little bit more run. The last thing I want to talk about is looking ahead and looking specifically to the Ravens next game. That's this weekend against the Denver Broncos, a really, really, really talented Broncos defense coming to Baltimore, and, temper expectations for this offense. It's going to be another ugly game. Their cornerbacks are, Pat Surtain is going to shut down whatever he's asked to shut down. They've done well defending tight ends this season. They've done well getting after the passer, even without Bradley Chubb. So, it's going to be a tough game. I think the Ravens take it. I'm really hoping that we see one rookie debut, either Charlie Kolar or David Ajabu this week. I don't think we see J.K. Dobbins. I think it's possible we see Marcus Williams. Have no clue on Hamilton and Ronnie Stanley. I think they could be cautious with Stanley and hold him out. Same thing with Hamilton, depending on what that injury is. But, I think they're going to need Andrews to step up in this game. And this is the kind of game that Andrews is going to have to be able to attack the middle of the field against good safeties, against good linebackers for sure, but he's going to have to step up and do it. I think the other thing is that the running game is really going to have to be gashing. They picked up 162 yards. I think they averaged 4.6 yards a carry. average 4.6 yards a carry. That's just not going to be enough. They have to be more explosive and more efficient in the running game, I think, to win this game against the Denver Broncos. On the defensive side of the ball, it's a really good chance for a bounce back game against what is, look, good targets, pretty good weapons in Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, but just not a good quarterback, not a good offense. It's just not functioning. And this is a defensive get right game. I don't know about the offense, but this is a defensive get right game to me where, maybe we get some Ojabo in there. Maybe we get some Marcus Williams or Kyle Hamilton in there. And the defense is really able to just not just win the game or hold the Broncos to limited points, but dominate the game. Didn't feel like they dominated against the Jaguars. They held. They didn't dominate early on. And I think dominating early on is really what's going to give this team the boost they need to win.
Yeah, and you mentioned dominating. I don't think they can do that without Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, or David Ojabo making his debut on defense. I don't think it's possible. I
think the idea of just injecting some juice into it after that is good too. Just the feel of it, right?
Yeah, they have to get one of the three things you just mentioned. Either Ojabo makes his debut and he sees a lot of juice coming off the edge, Kyle Hamilton comes back, or Marcus Williams comes back, or something different from last week. I'll tell you what, we cannot lose this game. If we lose this game, it would be the most embarrassing thing, to me as a Ravens fan all year. We cannot lose this game. These defenders for the Broncos are ready to send Russ out to the square and have him executed. Did you see Purcell about to rip the head off of Russell Wilson? These players have had enough of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning too, Raven fans, or this team is in disarray, this locker room is lost, this and that. That's a team that's in disarray. That's a room this locker room is lost. The Ravens could be headed there if they keep losing. That's definitely possible, but that's not where the Ravens are. And I think it's important to recognize that this team does, they're a talented team. They lost this game by a point. They've lost their games all year by a possession or less. The fact that they should have won all these games this year then they've lost them is a bad thing, but it's also a good thing. It reminds us that this team is actually still a good, capable football team by most advanced metrics. They're one of the top, I think, probably 6 or 7 teams. They're in the they're pretty consistently thought to be in the second tier of teams behind whatever you put in the juggernaut category with the Chiefs. That seems to change every week, but they're clearly in that second tier of teams, and that any team in that second tier of team can beat any team in tier 1 on any given Sunday. But they have to live up to that billing. I think they have to live up to the team that they are.
They have to earn it. They have to earn that back.
Yeah.
I think personally, hot take, I think they've lost that a little bit. You can't have 4 blown leads like this in a row and still be expected to be in the same conversation with the Chiefs, the Bills, any other Super Bowl contenders. That's earned. That's something that has to be earned. You can build a great team and things go wrong. Unfortunately, that doesn't matter on Sundays. It doesn't matter what Vegas says. It doesn't matter what rosters say. It doesn't matter how talented you are. What matters is when you get on the field and you line up against men about the other team beside you and you whoop them and you beat them. That's what matters at the end of the day. So unfortunately, I think they are, I agree with you, Nikhil. I think that they are talented enough to get to that level. I think they need to earn that back. And this week, beating the Broncos, not only beating the Broncos, but you mentioned that you don't think it's going to happen, but an efficient beat, like a beat, beating the Broncos, like you beat the Bucks, beating the Broncos, like you beat the Saints. That
and not even like you beat the Bucks or the Saints, because the Bucks stayed in that game in the first half, won the first half, and the Ravens had to kind of assert themselves in the second half. I want this game to be a boat race. I want us to pull a few big players on the Broncos early on. I think Duvernay not laying a complete goose egg on special teams would be very important to that. But yeah, we need it, and I'm saying this like it's going to happen, but the attitude of the team needs to be, the defense needs to be stuffing a 3-and-out on their first drive, and the offense needs to score a touchdown on their first drive. Set the tone for the game, and it's not about building up momentum. Momentum isn't a thing. I don't really think momentum in a game is that much of a thing, because the ball can tip and turn and fall one way or the other and reverse the momentum, in which case, what was the point of the momentum in the first place? No, to me, it's about just having a full 60-minute performance of the team that you can be. And this Broncos defense is tough. They're going to play well no matter how bad their offense is. But that's the test for your offense. That's the test for Lamar. It's the test for Greg Roman. You're facing a good defense and a bad offense, right? This is a game you should be able to win by dominating their offense and not making mistakes on ours. If the Ravens work, they don't have to hit 5 deep balls to beat the Broncos, right? They don't have to do that.
Yeah.
They're not going to.
The
But they
Panthers
have to
did
not
it.
make mistakes. They have to not drop easy plays. They have to not drop convertible first downs. And I think, like you said, that is really going to be the test of this game is can you be the team that you're supposed to be, not based on your roster or your Madden rating or what, advanced metrics say about you or any of that, what Vegas thinks about you. It's what you are out on the field. If you can live up to what your talent is, what your Madden rating is, what your metrics say about you, what Vegas is about you, you can live up to all of that. Only place you can do that is on the field. And I think the Ravens are going to have to prove that. It's a home game. They're going to have Marshall Yanda in the building to go into the Ring of Honor. So I think the atmosphere is going to be excited, but it's going to be tense. I think fans are going to be coming looking for a big game against a bad team. And I don't think we'll get it. I think we'll win, but I don't think we're going to get a big game against a bad team. I think it's going to be a moderate win, like a 24-17 kind of deal or a 24-14 kind of deal where it feels kind of like this game where the Jaguars are moving the ball but not scoring initially, and it feels like that most of the game where the Ravens just kind of hold on for a win. Hate to say it, but I think that's how it's going to go. Any predictions before we sign off here?
Yeah, I just think that's just unfortunately the way that the Ravens want to play football right now. This is what they are. Like, this is a team that offensively, they want an offense that's going to drain you. That's going to be exhausting to play. That does kind of like get better as the game goes on. And a defense that hopefully with more healthy pieces that they need back, like, is going to be consistently down your throat. Like it's like the consistently mean, consistently aggressive. Like, I want the Ravens defense to be aggressive like they were against the Bucks, like they were against the Saints. They were absolutely aggressive in those games. They were not backing down. They were putting pressure on the quarterbacks. They were blitzing. And I do think that, again, it has to do with the personnel. That's why they were different, because they didn't have Kyle Hamilton. Again, Kyle Hamilton is the key to everything with this defense. We need him back this week. I really need him back this week, and I don't know what's going to happen to him.
Yeah, and I think this defense can beat this Broncos offense without Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams. I don't think that's going to make obviously I want to see them back, but I don't think it makes or break this game. I think what more makes or break this game is like you said, that attitude and that feeling of whatever we do, this isn't good enough, right? In the first half, letting up 10 points was fine, but there was a feeling of, you only let up 10 points defense. They're only on pace for 20, pretty good job. Whereas in that first half, really they had, I'm going back to look at the play-by-play again here real quick. They had one drive that turned over by downs. They had 1 3 and out. They had one short. They had a touchdown after the fumble, and they had a long field goal drive at the end of the half that really only wasn't able. That the Ravens held firm at the goal line. That's an okay half, but you're going in losing 10-9, and so what you have to say is that's not good enough. We have to hold them the rest of the way here because we aren't beating them right now. And then to let in on the last few drives, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. It's just something we've seen too much from this team is the other team stacking drives against them. Is it a fatigue thing? Are they just too tired to the end of the game? Do they revert back to base calls? Or is it what I think it is, which is the lack of preemptive adjusting? So I think I think you're right in that, Williams or Hamilton back really seals this game for the Broncos against Russell Wilson. But I do think that it's a game that we should win defensively either way. And I think the real test is going to be the offense and what their defense throws at Roman and throws at Lamar versus, The Jags just executed their assignments really well. I think the Broncos are going to present a different, like a more dynamic challenge for this offense. So I think you got a score prediction for us, Jared?
Yeah, I'm gonna go close to your neighborhood. What you said. I'm gonna go 24, and I'm gonna go 24-10. I think thinking about it more with the defense versus the offense for the Ravens defense versus the Broncos offense. I just like I have a feeling they're going to get one of the three things I said with either a Jabo Hamilton or Williams back, and once that happens, I just think this defense just opens up. Also, I will say no more Marlon Humphrey in the slot work. No more. I'm done. I, I don't care for the reason why it happened. I don't want to see it again. It's cool that he can do it. It's cool you're sending him on blitzes. That's cute. You were paying him top 5 corner money. You put him on the outside.
Yeah, and I think that will happen against Sutton or Judy, whether they're lining up on the outside, because one of them is going to be on the outside every single play, and so I think Marlon's going to have the opportunity to stay on the outside, but they're going to need an answer in the slot. They might have to go back to Demarion Williams in that case if they need to move Marlon outside and they don't like Stevens in the slot. I mean, Williams didn't look great earlier in the season. Didn't play that much in this game. His snap count has definitely gone down over the last few games as the Ravens moved away from him and more towards Kyle Hamilton. But I do think that he might merit another look. It might be, it's hard to drop Chuck Clark down in the slot when you don't have anyone else to come in and play safety behind. So, you might have to kick Brandon Williams into the slot. I really don't know what you do there, but I agree with you. I don't know if I think this team scores 24 points though. I think I'm going to put it at a 20-10 win. I still think they win comfortably just because I think the Broncos are in that bad a state of a franchise and as a team right now. But I do think that the Ravens are going to be able to, have plenty of struggles and not really look like a great team. They're just going to come out with a win and, we'll tell ourselves at the end of the game, that's all that matters. And, I guess it kind of does, but they're not going to have the dominant bounce back game that we're really looking for. So, Jared, thank you so much for joining me. As always, everyone who tuned in, you as well. And, if you get a chance, make sure you drop a like and subscribe to the Rush Street Report YouTube channel because we definitely love to have you back in the future.
Thank you.